Hello and welcome to Hudson Valley News and Views. I'm County Legislator Catherine Borgia and I have a very exciting program for you today. I am here in Croton Harmon High School with the Advanced Placement Science, Environmental Science class, affectionately known as APES, to talk about an exciting project that they've been working on with their teacher, Mrs. Laurel Cartalicchio. I'm going to introduce you to her right now and have her tell you a little bit about the APES curriculum and how they decided to do the project that they're working on this semester. Mrs. Cartalicchio.
Hi, thank you. Yes, we have AP Environmental Science here. We have two courses, or two classes. With 46 students in them, and I'm delighted to have 7 of our students here to talk with us today about an exciting project that we're doing on designing solar thermal panels for a local comfort station that's down at Croton Landing. My focus as a teacher is to always try to bring in real-world applications to a course, and this course is definitely easy to do that. The Village of Croton on Hudson has given my contact information to Mr. Lee Streisfeld-Leitner, solar energy, renewable energy consultant, and we have been collaborating since the beginning of the school year with the students working on this project.
Before we continue about the project, just tell us a little bit about the curriculum of the class. What are the goals of the class? It's an advanced placement class, so it's a college-level course, correct?
Yes, so this course covers many diverse topics. We begin the year with a lot of biology-based learning, and we learn how the man impacts the environment as well as other organisms and food chains. We then proceed into looking into pollution, global climate change, renewable energy sources, and comparing that to conventional energy sources. And that's where this project does tie in very nicely, where we're looking at a renewable energy source, the solar thermal panels.
Great. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the project?
Okay, so yes, I met with Mr. Streisfeld-Leitner over the summer, and we came up with a plan to get the students involved in a lot of data collection. So there's a lot of background planning before we start actually designing a solar thermal panel. So Mr. Streisfeld-Leitner is the expert here, and he's come into the class 2 times this year to speak with the students, but we've gathered all sorts of data that the students, I'm sure, could share, but we did start in September.
Great. So tell me a little bit about how you picked this particular project. Tell me about your involvement, why this was of interest to you, and what you've spoken to the class about. Great.
Well, I've been a renewable energy consultant, primarily solar for 7 years, but now also looking at other types of renewable energy. And I am a area resident, so when they opened up the Croton Landing, I should also mention I am a former member of the Village of Croton Conservation Advisory Commission, and I'm currently on the sustainability team for the Village of Croton. But when they opened up Croton Landing, which is a wonderful park right on the Hudson River, I used the restrooms at the comfort station and noticed that they only provide they only provide cold water. Right. And I noticed that it has a reasonably sunny roof facing in a good direction for solar at a good tilt or pitch for solar. So the idea of creating a solar panel as a project with the high school popped into my head. And I first talked to Mayor Leo Wiegman and also to the village engineer, Dan O'Connor, to see if they would be interested. And then also cleared it with the Village Parks and Recreation Department that since it's their land, their park. So everybody said fine, and Mayor Wiegman put me in touch with Laurel Cartalicchio as a high school teacher who he thought would be interested, and we went from there.
Terrific. Well, it certainly sounds like you have had a lot of experience thinking about how your professional expertise can help in municipal settings. So I'm sure that the Croton Board is happy to have you on board with these initiatives and the work that you've done in the past. Now, Croton is a member of the Northern Westchester Energy Action Consortium, so I know that along with the other 14 Northern Westchester communities, Croton's always looking for ways to provide more information to their residents about living a more sustainable life and also implementing those practices themselves. So this really hits on all fronts. So why don't we start from the beginning? Tell us what happened after you had your initial meeting. What happened first? Did you come in to speak to the class? How did you decide on the scope of the project? What was your involvement in how we made the decisions about the project? So why don't you start?
Sure. Okay. Yeah, let me tell you a little bit, and then maybe some of the students can chime in. The first class that I came in as a guest to teach was very broadly about solar energy in general, and then specifically about solar thermal energy as opposed to solar electric. So what we're generating heat for heating water as opposed to generating electricity, which is very different equipment. Although they all capture energy from the sun, they capture different kinds of energy, and they do it in different ways. So we then focused on solar thermal, and then to create it a project for the students, besides building it, there were certain concepts that they would have to know in order to design it. What is thermal energy? How do you measure thermal energy? How much heat energy do people use in washing their hands? Of course, at the conversation, no one's showering or doing laundry. But in terms of hand washing, what temperature do most people use to wash their hands? What temperature water? How much energy will be needed to heat it up to that level? So I was trying to create some practical lessons, something that applies to the real world. So once they've gotten all of that information together, we'll then start to design and build a panel.
Great, terrific. Let's talk to some of the students. So tell us your name and tell us a little bit about when you came into class, what your expectations were and what you felt about this project, and a little bit, maybe some of you can talk to us a little bit about the data you've actually collected and what was surprising to you about that data, maybe, or maybe there wasn't anything surprising to you about that data. And then I'd love to hear a little bit more about if you can give us the layman's terms of how a system like this would actually work. So why don't we start?
I'm Adam Shockett. I'm a junior here at Croton High School. And the first day I walked into Miss Cardelicchio's class, actually 5 minutes late, but it was, I was just like, I was just expecting like a regular course where we would just, be working in the classroom. And then to my pleasant surprise, I found out that we were actually starting a project on the first day of class. So it was really cool. We were assigned to we were going to make observations on how many people use the bathrooms on an average day. So we were assigned shifts at Croton Landing, and we would tally people up, and then what we did after that was we tried to figure out how much water, like Mr. Streisfeld-Leitner said, do people usually use when they wash their hands. And that was actually what was surprising to me. People use a great amount of water. Like, we actually waste a lot of water when we wash our hands without even knowing it. So, people can try to stop doing that, but that was what was most surprising for me.
2 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. Just out of curiosity, hand washing is actually something that I really try to encourage people to do more of in my line of work, since I shake a lot of people's hands and I really like to avoid getting sick. But I wonder if do you feel that, or has anyone felt that people would use more if the water was warm versus cold? Is there a differential between those two things, do we think?
Probably.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your experience. Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there probably would be a difference in terms of that. And also it would help influence people to stay more, germ-free and washing their hands more, would be knowing that it is coming from a completely renewable source.
Right. Right.
And that we're really making an actual impact. Because when I walked into class, like Adam, I really didn't quite know what to expect. I expected learning the knowledge of being able to get out there and make a change, but it really was a great surprise knowing that we were actually going to do something almost straight away, because it was a perfect experience to almost instantly apply what we were learning in class.
Right. So how did you come up with the metrics that you were going to measure? Did you discuss that in class?
Well, yeah, we did. It took a lot of different, we had discussed it and planned it over a time. And when we actually started doing the tests for it, we got a lot of good data, and now we're applying that.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me, maybe Hunter, would you like to give me a little bit of a person? Tell me how you actually collected the data. How many times were you there? How did you divvy it up so that you knew you had accurate information? Is there seasonality? I'm sure there is. To how people use the comfort station at the Croton Landing. You started in September, so it was still summer, basically.
Well, Ms. Carter-Licchio allowed us to pair up with one of our friends. So we would go to the Croton Landing, and we would see how many people went into the bathroom to wash their hands, and we would tally that up. So we collected that data to see how much the sink and the water was being used. And then we went from there. We saw in class how much water people used to wash their hands, and it was astounding. Some people used like upwards of 3 or 4 liters of water just to wash their hands. Then we also did another test where we checked what temperature of water was favorable. We had hot water and cold water, and then a combination of the water. And so that's how we determined how hot the energy needs to make the water.
And what did you find? What did you find? What was people's preference?
Well, we found that people like water that's kind of warm. It's not cold, but not boiling. So it's whatever feels comfortable. No two people are alike, though, but generally it was somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, interesting. Great. So I see that one of the other things that you did measure was basically the, actually I don't even understand, maybe someone could explain to me what this means, the ability of different colors of metal so to act as solar collectors, so basically looking at the panels themselves, what colors are the best absorbers of light? Does anybody want to talk a little bit about that? Okay, great. Tell us your name.
Hi, I'm Andrew Judge, and basically what the different colors of the metal is like a black piece of metal will absorb more heat and light as opposed to a white piece of metal, because white reflects it. That's why when you look at a white shiny piece of metal in the light, it's kind of hard to look at.
The reason that you wear light clothes in the summertime versus dark colored clothes in the summertime.
Exactly. So we would use the right type of metal to be more efficient of absorbing heat, and obviously you wouldn't want to use a white piece of metal for if you're trying to heat up water. So that's pretty much it.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about where you are now and what the next steps are for the collection of data and the analysis of your data.
Should I introduce myself? I'm Lucy. I'm a junior. And right now, after we've calculated how much water people use on average, the average temperature, and the kinds of colors that we're going to be using for the passive solar energy water heater, I think we're going to get involved in trying to acquire the technology that we're going to implement later, and then presenting that data and finalizing it to the town and proposing it as an actual project.
Tell me, was there anything surprising that you found out when you were doing this data collection? Was there anything that you thought was going to come out very differently than it did?
I think the only thing that really came out differently than what I expected was when we were doing the color tests, a lot of what we'd originally thought didn't match up. Like, I think we had some interesting color choices like midnight blue and just a nice darker brown, and I think some of the lighter colors and the brown, actually, it might have been something wrong with the measuring implement, but we found that like the midnight blue, the really dark colors didn't actually absorb as well as brown and some of the other ones.
So what was the conclusion you drew from that? Are you using a brown?
I think, I'm not sure what exactly we wrote down at the end. Does anyone remember specifically what we had? We had a black at all? You can disregard everything I've just said.
No, I mean, it's still interesting. I guess one of the interesting things about doing science is that sometimes your expectations are confounded, right? I mean, that's the reason that you do the hands-on kind of data research. So I think that's interesting. Now, why were you choosing the different colors? Was that just part of the learning experience to see, right, how different colors would potentially,
Yeah, as one of the students, I'm forgetting which one, but pointed out about white versus black. White obviously is bright because it reflects most light. Black looks dark because it's actually absorbing more of the light energy. One interesting thing is that we talked about, although we didn't really get to demonstrate in class. I should mention when they're talking about the metal, we had little squares of aluminum metal that we spray painted, or actually we brushed on acrylic paints of different colors, and then we put them on the windowsill or on the desk near the window in the sun and let them sit there for 10, 20 minutes and then measured the temperatures to see which colors actually absorb more of the energy from the sun and converted it to heat. One of the things that I taught them about is something called selective coatings, because when manufacturers make a solar panel, they're often not actually black, because while black does the best job of converting the light energy into heat, as it heats up, it also tends to radiate off or get rid of more energy. So they're usually looking for a color that is the best compromise of creating the most energy but not also losing the most energy. So most solar panels tend to be a very dark blue or very dark purple, not quite black. The other thing that we have to look at is we're hoping this is going to sit on the comfort station roof for 20, 30, 40 years. So we also want to find coatings that are durable and aren't going to have to be recoated. The village wouldn't like that so much.
Speaking from a municipal point of view, tell me, what in your previous science education do you think really helped you the most in doing this, in this particular hands-on project, would you say?
Well, my name is Daniel Worley, and I'm a senior at Croton Harmon High School. And I think, well, in earth science, we talked about like the position of the sun during different times of the year. So I think that like helped us determine the angle of the solar panels and stuff like that.
There's geometry involved in that too, right?
Yeah.
Thinking about exactly.
Yeah, like.
Sun hits this particular building and its particular geographic
Right.
location in the park. So that's interesting.
Right.
You know, someone mentioned, I forget if it was on camera or just when we were chatting beforehand, that one of the particular things that they like about earth science is the fact that it brings it all, a lot of different interdisciplinary learning together. So, as a science class later in your high school career, it's really it's good for you educationally to see how some of these things that seem theoretical can really come together and do something practical for the community. So. Take me through the next steps of the project. Once you have a decision and you learn about the mechanics of what's going to happen next, how's it going to be executed?
Well, the next thing we're going to do with the students is we're going to build a small size solar collector. We'll use probably a flat black spray paint, but we'll have a sheet of metal. I was thinking maybe about 1 feet by 4 feet. You guys haven't heard this yet, so I might as well tell you. So we'll have a sheet of metal, probably aluminum or copper. We'll spray paint it flat black. We'll put a copper tube on it and solder that on. And I'll actually have a circulating pump to pump water through in a small insulated tank of some sort. Maybe just a plastic bucket with some foam wrapped around it. But what we'll do is we'll go outside, we'll put it at an angle that makes sense on a sunny day, and we'll measure on this particular size piece of metal how much heat energy we can actually produce. So we'll do it maybe for half an hour and see what it produces. Now, the things that we'll have to figure out from that to extrapolate to what size panel we need for the comfort station in Croton is not only, it's a little more complicated than saying, okay, this is going to be 1 feet by 4 feet, let's say, so that's 4 square feet. All right, if we know we need, I'm just going to make up some numbers here, if we need 10,000 BTUs of heat energy to achieve our goal for the comfort station, it's not going to be as simple as if this produces 2,500 during our half-hour period. We know we need 4 of them. What we're going to have to calculate is the sun at different times of the day, during different days of the year, will have a different strength. So we're going to have to figure out, okay, if it was a half hour during, let's say, from 10 to 10:30, that's going to be very different than what the sun's going to do from 6:30 to 7 in the morning or from noon to 12:30. So we're going to have to try to extrapolate from that little sample period what it'll do over an entire day. Also, we're not going to be doing this. It's going to be sometime during the spring and we need to know what it's going to do during the summer. So we're also going to have to do some math to figure out, okay, during June at the summer solstice, when the sun's at its highest and strongest, what is it going to do then? We also know we're going to lose some heat to the cold air around this. The sun's not quite as strong in August, but the air around it is warmer. So we'll have less heat loss. So there's some practical things we're going to have to figure out. The other thing I wanted to mention, which is very nice about this comfort station and why it's such a good project, is the comfort station is seasonal. It's only open to be used from, I believe it's May through October. So we do not have to deal with freezing temperatures during the winter. If we were running water up through this, at nighttime during the winter, there's no sun, everything would freeze, the pipes would crack, and it'd be a disaster. So since this is seasonal use, we don't have to deal with all of the freezing issues that we would have to deal with doing a system for a house or any year-round facility. When you're doing that, you have to deal with antifreeze solutions and separate loops of antifreeze and coils and heat exchangers and so on. So this is a much simpler system, and it really lent itself very nicely to doing it with the class.
Yeah, no, that's terrific. How do you protect the system in the wintertime?
There will be a valve and a spigot. Okay. You'll turn one valve to keep water from going through it anymore, and you'll turn another valve just to let it all out. And just right on. They're fine. They're all going to be, metal, copper, and aluminum, so they're going to be durable. They'll, like I said, they'll last for 20, 30, 40 years without a problem. So, and that's another thing, a panel that's meant for all year use in our region, in our climate, will have to have glass glazing and insulation and so on. We don't have to deal with that, again, because it's seasonal. So without the glass glazing, it also makes it much more durable, less, prone to vandal damage and so on.
That's very interesting. I wouldn't have suspected that, but that's interesting. So how do you calculate for days when it's not sunny?
Well, if we were doing this in a home, solar becomes the primary source of heat for the hot water, but there'll be a standard hot water heater. It becomes your backup system. And of course, in the winter, as I said before, the sun is weak. The days are short. During the winter, for a year-round use system, during the winter it doesn't do such a great job. So you need a standard water heater as backup anyway. Here, the village's their position is right now we're not providing any kind of hot water. Exactly. And if there are 5 cloudy days in a row it's not doing so well, you know what? People will have lukewarm water to wash their hands. So, so the village won't be spending on additional heating to back this up. We'll get what we get.
Yeah. So speaking of spending, do you have a cost estimate for this project and how is it being financed?
We have a proposal before the village to finance it, and we have a few other ideas as well. Of course, since we're designing and building, the cost will be very, very low. I'm estimating it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,800, although that's on the high end. I'm assuming worst case in terms of having to buy everything full retail. But I'm assuming that we'll actually be able to talk people into giving us some donations or discounts given what it's being used for.
Great. Excellent. So tell me, this is the first year you've done a project like this. Is that correct? So has it met your expectations? What has been surprising to you in terms of how this changed your interaction with the class, the curriculum with the class?
I find projects like this very exciting, and they're going to be unique every year. So hopefully next year I welcome to other people in the community to collaborate with for future classes. But yes, so please, we're always looking for more people to collaborate with because I want my students to really have an impact and have a say in what happens in our community. So I'm delighted with it, and it's just been a great experience.
Great. That's excellent. So you mentioned that you had spoken to in Austin to talk to the mayor about the possibility of, or the feasibility, the economic feasibility, I guess, of putting solar panels on the municipal building in Austin, which is quite an old building, as you know. What are some of the challenges in terms of using photovoltaic solar panels in older buildings, for example?
With any building, it doesn't matter so much whether it's old or new. And you mentioned photovoltaics. with solar photovoltaic, solar electric, or solar thermal, the only real issue you get in an old building is the roof going to sustain the weight of the, now solar panels do not weigh very much. I don't want to get too technical, but most roofs in current building codes are built to handle what they call a load. There are dead loads and there are live loads, but they're built to handle loads of 40, 50, 60 pounds per square foot. Solar electric or PV panels tend to weigh 3.5, 4 pounds per square foot. The hot water panels, even when the water is circulating through them, which adds some weight, they tend to be 5, 6 pounds per square foot. So it's not that big a weight load. But whether it's a new building or an old building, generally you're going to need an engineer to sign off on the structure and say, yes, it's going to be able to handle it. If not, you're going to have to maybe add a little bit of extra wood under the roof or something. Oh yeah, and they're not prohibitive. It's usually not that bad.
Yeah, interesting. Tell me a little bit about your business. How long have you been doing this? How long have you been in the area? How is your business model?
Well, actually, I've been in the solar industry since I moved to Croton, very specifically because when I moved into my home, I looked at the roof and thought it would be an interesting roof for solar. I then began to think that it might be interesting to install it myself. And then I began to think, well, maybe I should think about a career in solar. So actually, I cold called a solar company and ended up starting a new career, and that was, like I said, a little over 7 years ago. Over the last 2 years, I've been expanding into other types of renewable energy. So I'm working with a number of startup companies that do waste to energy, so converting municipal solid waste or trash, or also sewage sludge into energy. Biomass, which is growing usually some kind of plant material to turn that into energy, and I'm working with a startup company that takes what most people think of as pond scum, which is also known as duckweed, and turning that into energy. Working with a company actually that's out of the New Paltz area that has a new photovoltaic technology, which has some advantages that I'm very excited about, and a couple of other projects like that. So just sort of general purpose renewable energy.
Yeah, so you see opportunities in our area for burgeoning technology.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
That's terrific. Well, you mentioned the duck pond. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about what maybe your next project will be.
Well, we are working simultaneously on 2 projects, and the duck pond is another project the class is working on now, and we're looking at water quality, and the town has already taken a number of steps to improve the water quality of the duck pond and decrease the eutrophication or growth of algae and duckweed in that pond. So, yes, but the students are also, they are working on creating informational brochures for the general public to be able to take action, daily actions or activities, how they influence the duck pond in the watershed area. So that is another project we are doing this year.
I want to go back to the students if I could for a minute and just ask you, having been involved in this project, has this changed your point of view on the use or the practicality or the your personal likelihood of entertaining some of these new technologies for your own personal use with your own family, for example, in your own home, or to give you an idea of something that you might do career-wise or in college, for example? Let's start with you, because I know you had said you had a little bit of a conversion.
Yeah. Well, just the fact that we're actually doing it, the fact that we're studying it in class and we're actually applying it to real life, so we're going to be seeing how this actually works. I mean, depending on where you live, depending on how the availability of the sun and your solar availability, yeah, I mean, I would definitely consider talking to my parents, trying to get it running in my house. Yeah. Like, obviously, we need to find some alternative ways. We're not staying ourselves for too much longer, unless we do. So that's pretty much it.
Really good workforce for the village of Croton. That Leo Eggman is a smart guy. Anybody else want to add?
My parents actually our family has a house in western Massachusetts, and up there's a really large, like a large scene towards green energy, renewable energy, more sustainable social practices, whether it be like recycling, composting, or investing in these renewable energy technologies. And I've been influenced a lot there and by this class about just how easy it can be to install solar panels. And although sometimes the process will take a long time, like installing solar panels or geothermal heating, it definitely pays off in the end financially once you get past that financial burden, or obviously environmentally.
Let me ask you, is there a generational shift, would you say? Do you think that people of your generation are more willing to make that investment?
I think definitely, because I mean, it wasn't really until our parents' generation that the environment was even of any concern whatsoever. And for them, it was like a new thing, so, you know, people were still questioning it. People are still questioning it today. But I think with the latest generation, it's clear that, you know, the environment is deteriorating, sadly, and that we need to take action. So, like Lucy said, there's so many easy things that you can do that it's like almost stupid not to just take some steps in terms of, you know, trying to help the environment.
So on that point, does anybody feel that they have influenced maybe their peers to think about some of these issues where they haven't before?
I think definitely I've influenced my parents a little bit. I talked to them in the beginning of the year about maybe installing some solar panels, and I think that they're considering it still, but it's the only drawback is it's expensive at first, but it does definitely pay off in the end, because if your house is in a good enough spot, you'll eventually be making money off the electricity you produce, and also you'll have clean electricity. So I think it's definitely something I would consider.
Yeah, certainly. I know just fairly recently New York State did there's an exemption in New York State that allows municipalities to pay more than the lowest price for electricity. Typically, governments always have to pay the lowest price for everything because you're spending taxpayer dollars. But about 5 or 6 years ago, there was legislation that allowed municipalities to purchase renewable energy even if it was at a higher cost. And I know that for their own municipal uses, and Croton actually does do that for some of their energy costs. So you certainly live in a community where people are willing to, as you say, as a community basis, are willing to make that commitment. So, sure.
Just one thing that I want to add about that is that in terms of financial need, one really interesting thing about solar energy is that if you're making enough, if your house is in a good enough spot, if you get enough sunlight, you can actually send your electricity to the local, you know, Con Ed, and they'll actually pay you, which is, so you can actually make money off of your own solar energy. So I think, like, financially, after the initial cost, it truly does pay you back.
Yeah, certainly. I think it's a very interesting thing to see that meter run backwards. That's kind of a cool thing. I have actually seen that in homes that have been that have generated a lot of electricity. Tell me, does anybody have? Well, first of all, anything else that you'd like to say about this topic? But also, does anybody have any next steps that after this class they are going to pursue with any of these initiatives?
Well, I actually have like a different sort of point to make. So I think that when like people are going to be walking through the park, they're going to see the solar panels and say, oh, like they put those on that roof, and this hot water we're getting is coming right from there. Maybe we can do this also. And I think it'll spread like awareness through the community, and people want to have this. So yeah.
Besides this TV show, which is going to be on Cablevision Public Access, what other types of promotion are you doing to let the community know that this project is happening?
Well, one thing, when the system is installed, there will be a signage saying, you know, that it was designed by the students of.
Yeah, you have to insist that your name be on that.
Yeah. No, it absolutely will. Credit will be given where credit is due. So, yeah, so you guys will get credit for having designed and built the system. And so the signage will...
money for that signage.
So, but yeah, absolutely, one of the reasons that the village is approving it is, again, they decided when they built this comfort station, they weren't going to pay a cent for heating water. The fact that they are willing to consider putting some money in is because they do see it as a benefit to the public to demonstrate that solar works, as well as the fact that it was a great project for the high school students and student involvement, but that it demonstrates that solar is something real, something that works, and that the community can be exposed to.
Terrific. That's great. So any other final thoughts? Not kill you here with this microphone cord. Any other final thoughts from any of the students? Yeah.
Like you said before about us influencing our peers, I think that we're both influencing everyone around us in the school and also the older generations that about like we've
going with that older
previous I think we're showing them that, like we've said, it's so much more doable than everyone has in their mind, we think. Like, because we're showing our students around us that it really is possible to go out and do something with what we're learning almost, and very soon too. And we're showing the previous generations that that it's much easier than we think they have in their minds, because when I've spoken to my family, they've said things like, because they're not as informed as we've been about it. They think that it isn't possible if you don't get so much sunlight in one short amount of time, but we're showing everyone that it's applicable, it's doable, it's possible, and we're actually giving proof for that.
No, so you're not only leading by the example of the actual project, but also just helping to educate people just by your discussions with your family, with your friends, with your peers. So I think that that's really terrific. And although I have a marketing background, so I'm always thinking about publicity, I do think that it is important to have your names on there. You're Croton residents. You are the people who are young adults who are going to be adults very, very soon, who are going to be making some of the policy decisions, making some of the decisions about how you live your life. So it is important for people to understand that it can be done, and that it's very possible for your individual actions to have an impact. So I think that that's really a really remarkable takeaway from this class, not only the scientific benefit, but the societal benefit as well. So I really applaud you. But I would like to give anyone else who has a last thought an opportunity to speak. Yeah.
Well, on the financial part of this, like as time goes on and they mass produce all of these solar panels, the price will just drop more and more. And as technologies improve, like efficiency will improve, and I think it'll just become like a rapid adaptation for everyone.
Yeah. Well, I certainly hope that that's true. I live in Ossining, and we have a boat and canoe club that's owned by the municipality right on our river, and we all live in by the river, and we know that there's frequently it's very windy down there. And we were trying to, as a municipality, see if there was any way to capture that wind. And when we first started looking at it, it was probably about 6 or 7 years ago, the technology wasn't there. But now the technology is there. And we have, it's small, but it's something. It's a little something. We have a very small windmill that captures the wind on windy days and generates some of the fuel that they use there for the activities that go on there, which are fairly minimal. It's not as though people are hanging out there all the time, but they do have a kitchen there. They do have air conditioning in one of their rooms. They do have electricity, and they have bathrooms and showers and things. So it really is true that if you're open to it and you're willing to look, and technology does change, and you stay educated, that there are small things that you can do, and small things add up to big things. So All right. Well, I want to thank you all very much. This is a very good conversation. I have to say that I'm very impressed with you guys as students, and certainly with you as an innovative teacher. And I think that the future's in very good hands, and that makes me feel relieved as I, as a member of the previous generation. Any last words?
Yeah, no, thank you very much for putting this together, and thank you to the students and all of their peers. This is just a small sampling of the students who are working on this. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to getting this project done.
Terrific. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm really happy that we did get to share some of the work we've been doing all year. I think it's so important because these students have been working on this all year, that to see how long and how involved projects like this can be. So, thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. So, fast forward a couple of months, we had the classroom experience with the Croton AP Environmental Sciences class, and now we're out here. You can see it's towards the end of the school year, the very last week of school, and the students have built their prototype, and they're going to talk a little bit about some of the data collection that they did and some of the work that they did. And they have we have a representative of the class, some of whom were with us at the earlier part of the segment, and some new students. So we're going to start. Please introduce yourself and tell us the fact that you've prepared. Oh, Hunter, you're going to go first?
I'm Hunter, and I've prepared the data on how many people use the bathroom.
So tell us a little bit about that. How many people use the bathroom?
Well, generally, for each weekend day, there's 100 people that use the bathroom each day.
Great. How did you do that data collection?
We had students observe how many people would use the bathroom.
And obviously it's seasonal, like more people in some times of the year. So when did you do the observations?
We did it in the early fall.
Okay, great. Okay, next little bit of facts for us.
Okay, my name is Elodie Jacobson, and I am doing the amount of water on average that is used when one washes their hands.
Okay, and what is the amount of water that one uses when washing one's hands?
So every kid in the AP Environmental Science class took a turn washing their hands for 45 seconds, and on average it was about 0.63 gallons of water per person.
Wow, that's more than I would have expected. Yeah. And do you think 45 seconds is the amount of time that generally someone washes their hands? When you were washing your hands for 45 seconds, did that seem unusual to you, the way you would wash your hands in the other times during your life?
I would hope that people would wash their hands for 45 seconds, but I don't think that's probably not if they're in a rush, but it's hard to tell.
Okay, all right, that's interesting. Okay, next fact. Introduce yourself first, please.
I'm Billy Vlad. I collected the average water temperature people preferred when washing their hands.
And what was it?
87 degrees.
Interesting. That's warmer than I would have thought.
Yeah.
What was the range temperatures? Do you remember?
No, I do not.
How did you do that collection?
We put cold water in a bucket, and then we added warm water until people felt that it was a comfortable temperature to wash their hands.
Okay, interesting. Were you surprised that it was as warm as it was?
Yeah, I thought it was going to be a little bit colder, but I mean, people have different preferences.
Yeah, sure, but I would have guessed it would be like in the 70s or something like that. But that's interesting. Okay, what's next?
How you doing? I'm Ben Goldberg. I'm also a junior. I compared the ability of different colors to act as solar collectors. We took about little squares of tiles, and we painted them different colors, anywhere from the range of like red, green, purple, blue, black, and we found out that black and dark blue serve as the best solar collectors.
And was that a surprising finding?
No, because black and dark blue absorb the most sunlight out of the group.
I happen to be wearing black and dark blue, and I can tell you it's quite hot here in the sun. Okay, what's next?
Hi, my name is Aaron Baltic-Schechter. I compiled all the data they had and found how much energy we needed to raise the water temperature to 85 degrees Celsius from the groundwater. So I found that between 15,702 BTUs per day to 28,787 BTUs per day.
So let's ask. So was that a surprise, that amount?
No. For in the real world of solar, we're typically dealing with providing hot water for an entire household, and that's going to be also showers and dishwashing and clothes washing and so on. And a typically family of 4 is going to use somewhere around 15 million BTUs over the course of a year. So these numbers seemed about where I would have thought they would come out.
Okay. Tell us our last fact.
I'm Lucy Dean Stockton, and I just made a list of all the data compiled. And this really just tested how much heat was used to heat a gallon of water. And we found, which was about 8.35 pounds. British thermal units, which he mentioned earlier, heat about 1 pound. And we found that the initial water temperature that we heated with our device went from 67 degrees to 102 degrees in an hour, which is a change of 35 degrees. So, yeah.
Interesting. All right, so let's take a look at the device. Now, this is an actual solar panel, but it's acting as a prototype for what's actually going to go on to this building, correct? Somebody want to talk me through what we're looking at when we see this panel?
What we're doing here is we're just taking the mock-up solar collector, and we're putting the angle to be the same as the comfort station over there. Now, we're not facing in the same direction as the comfort station, which is fine. The sun's going to travel over the course of the day and hit the solar collectors from different positions, but we wanted to at least get the angle about right. Now, this is a mock-up solar collector. It's, well, I should say it is a real solar collector, but it's sort of a small model of what eventually might go on the roof. It's exactly 4 square feet of copper, which was then spray painted flat black, which does a very good job of taking the sun's energy, absorbing it, turning it into heat. And we went with 4 square feet, so it'd be easy to figure out the amount of heat energy that we accumulate and figuring out how much per square foot. Then based on some of the test data we get from this, we can then figure out how many square feet do we need the actual collectors on the roof of the comfort station to be. And as long as we're here, I'm going to go ahead and put some water in there. We'll take some readings, and we'll see how it does in this location. It's a very breezy day, and as I mentioned in class the other day, I think the fact that this is uninsulated and unglazed, meaning there's no glass, means we're probably getting a lot of heat loss. Every time a little breeze comes along, it's going to be taking a lot of heat away from this. So ultimately, I think we're going to want an insulated and glazed collector, but we're going to see how this one does right now. Okay, this is a tool that most people in the solar industry know very well. There are now electronic versions of it, but this thing's probably been around for a quarter century or so. It's called the Solar Pathfinder. It's a very elegantly designed piece of equipment. If you can see on the top, there's a paper chart, and each of those dashed arcs shows the path of the sun through the sky through each of the 12 months of the year. At the top of that chart is December, so that's the shortest month. The sun takes a very low path through the southern sky. At the very bottom end of the chart is the month of June, so that's the month of the summer solstice. That's when the days are longest and the sun takes the longest path through the sky. And if you can see, looking down into it, there's a plastic dome over the chart, and we see the reflections of trees and other things that might be producing shade on a site where you want to do solar. Those reflections are just naturally superimposed over the chart. So by just looking at this device, I can see how much shade a particular spot is going to get over the course of an entire year in order to decide whether a site is going to be appropriate or not for solar and how well things will work. So just a very, very elegantly designed little tool. Just as a demonstration of how different colors and materials absorb heat differently from the sun and some do a better job of converting. This is a digital thermometer that I'm using. And the grass Now the grass is a reasonably dark color, however, because of a lot of other properties, it's only at 77 degrees, 78 degrees. The panel that I mentioned previously, that's just flat black painted copper. It's up at 100, 101 degrees. So, you know, they're both sitting out here the same day, the same sun, the same weather conditions, but a big difference in terms of how much energy one is producing versus the other. Of course, one thing you can't tell on the camera, we have a couple of tubes running through that with water that is being pumped through the panel. And then right now we just have it going into an insulated paint can as our water tank. So that's 100 degrees, but I should mention that right now we have that water is circulating through, absorbing that heat and dumping it into that paint can. So I'm sure if we didn't have the water running, that copper sheet would be that much hotter. Because right now we're working to get that heat away from the copper and down into our can.
In the classroom, we used the panel with just looking out a window. So it wasn't quite exact. The angle was slightly off and not all of the metal got light, but we were able to see the simulation, like how it was able to produce a lot of heat flowing through the bucket. So it'll be feasible to see it working on the roof.
So the building of the panel, you did face some technological challenges in building this.
Yes, having never actually, you know, again, I've been in the industry for over 7 years, but I've never actually built a panel myself. So one of the things, when I was originally thinking about how we would build it with the students, I had notions of, I don't know if you can tell, but the copper tubes run along the back of those copper sheets. But the idea is to transfer the heat from the copper sheets. Those are called the collector plates, and they're doing all of the work of converting the sun's energy into heat. But we want to transfer that energy into the copper pipes and into the water that's running through, circulating through the pipes. In terms of how to fasten the collector plate to the pipes, I realized originally I was going to have us just bolting it in a few places, but it occurred to me that you wouldn't necessarily have good contact all the way between the pipes and the plate, and you wouldn't necessarily get a very good transfer of heat. So I ended up soldering the pipes to the back of the plate, which involves using the same kind of solder and flux that a plumber would use for soldering pipes. It also required using a blowtorch, so it's not something that we were going to do in Ms. Cardelicchio's classroom.
Okay, thank you. So when we were speaking earlier, we talked a little bit about how you determined that this would be a good site for these solar panels and some of the geometry associated with figuring out what the kind of collection would be. Was this experience useful, do you think, in terms of translating that more academic topic into a more practical application? I'll take an answer from anybody.
Yeah, I think it was definitely more useful because when you're just learning in the classroom, you're just listening to the teacher talk. But when we get to go out here and do this on our own, it really shows us how to do it, and we have to do it right, or it just not the best results. Yeah.
So, did this inspire anyone, do you think, to think about something like this as either a career or an interest of study in your future studies? Most of you guys are juniors, right? Yeah.
I actually already want to do that, something environmentally related beforehand, but this definitely confirmed that I want to do something like this because I would be doing something like this in the real world. So I definitely found it interesting.
Yeah. Anybody else have any surprising experiences doing this project? No? Okay. Tell me, what's the next steps?
The next step is to have Lee start planning the real solar collector, and hopefully that'll be mounted this summer, and hopefully we'll be able to get some students. We're going to be emailing them and hopefully get some students back in to see the final product.
Yeah. Well, that'd be great. You have to let me know when that happens so I can come down and wash my hands in warm water, 86-degree water. So, tell me a little bit about, this was the first time you've done a project like this in AP Environmental Science, correct? This is the first time you've done sort of a hands-on project. How do you think this changes the teaching of this course?
I think teaching AP Environmental Science is the perfect course for real problems for students to solve. And making it real for students, especially teenagers, is critical in their learning. So this has been a wonderful experience. I'm open to any other new problem solving and projects we could do in the future. It's invaluable.
Yeah. My daughter is actually an 11th grader as well, and she's also just completing an AP Environmental Science class. And I know that right here on the Hudson River, we have so many opportunities to do types of projects like that. So we'll have to, if we catch wind of any good thing to do, we'll have to make sure that Croton students are involved in it as well. Okay, so since we last looked at our solar panel, we've just discovered that actually we've had a dramatic increase in temperature, both of the water and of the panel itself. Does somebody want to walk me through that? I know there was someone who was data collection. Okay,
Well,
so you have your thermometer.
Yeah, and when we first started the experiment probably about 25 minutes ago, we checked the water temperature, and it was about 74 degrees. And currently the water temperature it's at 102.4 degrees.
Wow.
So it's gone up almost 30 degrees
Right.
in about 25 minutes.
Right, and what about the panel? Let's take a reading on that.
The panel itself is 106.4 degrees.
So that's pretty dramatic, I think, about the potential for solar energy to really accomplish the goals of this project.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. Alrighty. So does anybody have any final words that you'd like to tell me about this project or about AP Environment, how AP Environmental Science has changed your life for the better? Just trying to... Okay.
That I wanted to thank Lee Streisfeld-Leitner for volunteering. He's been in the classroom 3 or 4 times now. We've met multiple times. It's wonderful to have, community members that are experts in the field to come and work with the students. It's been great. Great.
Lee, do you have any final words?
Sure. I really want to thank the kids for being so interested and attentive and helping out. And of course, Laurel Cardelicchio for agreeing to do this. It's been a lot of fun. And I'm looking forward to getting this done and on the roof so that the village of Croton can have warm water when they wash their hands. And I should also thank Leo Wiegman and the town engineer, Dan O'Connor, and the other people in the village who gave their approval for this project. And so far, so good.
Find that there's going to be competition for people who want some similar things once they see the success of this particular project. And it's great. I mean, we're here at the beautiful Croton Landing. I don't know, if everyone knows exactly this lovely little gem right here on the Hudson River in Croton. And it's really nice to be able to improve the quality of life for the residents who use this lovely facility, and to create something that will make it nicer to be here all year round. So that's good job, everyone. I'm really pleased that I got to hear about this project, and I think it was a excellent collaboration with the schools and private industry, and I hope we see a lot more of this going on in the future. So thanks very much for watching Hudson Valley News and Views, and we'll see you next time.